Greetings. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are back again on, well, it is Friday for everyone else, but because it's sundown, it is technically Shabbat. So we are back with our Shabbat readings at 6:30, as promised. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Remember, we do have a 20-minute delay. And we have a little bit of a delay, 20 seconds. I think I said 20
Mhm.
minutes, 20-second delay. We won't keep you hanging that long. So if there are comments in the chat, just be patient with us as we get to them. So, of course, we would like to open up the space and give reverence to the Most High Yah, and as well as acknowledge our Chief Jegna, Chief Yuya Assaan-ANU, for allowing this space and allowing us to come and begin our Shabbat and fellowship together, and also be able to come and share the reading and what we've received from the reading with you all. So I am Sister Deidre, and I am joined by my co-host. I got it right, Ema
Yes.
Precious. um,
Yes.
and so, Ema Precious is going to grace us with the preface, which we definitely like to make sure that we, give that reminder because there is special about this tome, and these are really some takeaways that we will continue to repeat every time we come on.
Absolutely. So greetings. Um, so the Anu Way Foundation's preface states that this book is not to be read only once. We are to read the words of this book of knowledge and wisdom out loud. We are to discuss the convictions of this work with our Anu brothers and sisters. We should share this information with our people. This publication should be read daily. Every line in this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own merit. The truth is to be deliberated.
Thank you, Ema Precious. And so, before we begin the reading, I just want to say that we are continuing where the brothers left off last strong. We are in the section of family, the overall section of family, and we'll be reading the second paragraph along with a quote included under the area of generational curses. And so you'll notice that the thumbnail was titled Motives because um, we're we're really going to be talking about motives and what's behind creating family. So, without further ado,
Yes, I'll get started. Motives for the creation of family are as important as methods. Why is the catalyst for understanding and confusion. But before we ask why, we must cover what. What provides us with knowledge of our subject of inquiry. Sister Deidre will be reading a quote from the book Solutions to Dysfunctional Family Relationships.
family can be defined as the fundamental group of any society which consists of two or more individuals with the same goals and objectives. This is an old definition with New World relevancy. If the family or home, oh, I'm sorry, same goals and objectives. Originally, family was defined by those who served the household. This is an old definition with New World relevancy. If the family or home is an entity unto itself, the members who reside under this entity should allow supreme allegiance to it. As they serve it, it serves them. How this family is served is defined by home culture. So, um,
Mm.
we're going to dissect this a little bit and share what we came up with and what this section of the reading kind of means to us. And so um, I'm going to Ema Precious, if you want to start with kind of
Sure,
what we came up with.
sure. So, when we when we work from that one of the statements in the preface that indicates that each line of this work can stand on its own merits. We're actually going to kind of stand on that for our time this evening. And what we're first going to pull from, let me just get my text here, is the idea of what and why. And when we examined what and why, what we began to think about is, if first we have to examine the what in order to get to the why, then we begin to wonder, well, what about the other W's, right? Because we learn in elementary school or primary school that there are 5 W's, and then there's also a little special H at the end, and we'll get to that at the end as it's aptly placed there. But for today's experience, what we are going to do is not pose one question to you, but we're actually going to ask you to really ask the questions that we're going to pose and discuss today to yourself. And if you want to share in the chat, please feel free to do so as we're going to have an open dialogue.
Mhm.
So, the first question is what? And so, Sister Deidre, I'm just going to double back and read a little something, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on it. So, in the text, we read that what provides us with knowledge of our subject of inquiry. So, if our subject of inquiry this evening is generational curses, um, my question to you is what is a generational curse within the idea of family?
So, I mean, I sat with this a little bit, and so what as a generational curse can be many things. I think we kind of shared some of those things with the call last strong with the brothers. It can be the way that we eat. A lot of the times you'll notice in families, like, you'll get together and it's always based on around eating, but then we have to stop and think, well, what are we eating? What are we putting into our bodies? And then how does that in itself turn to things like diabetes, heart disease, hypertension? Those are things that can be generational curses. There are things that run in certain groups, and they'll say, like, oh, it's I think it's 5 of them, but I can only remember 3 off the top of my head. And it'll be the hypertension, diabetes, and high blood pressure, cancer. And a lot of the times people will say, like, oh, it runs in the family. But do we stop to think, why does it run in the family? What are we doing to perpetuate those things that run in the family? And that's something simple, like what we eat, what we ingest into our bodies. So that's one example.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think another example of that is actually depicted in the Anu way. And we went into it a few weeks ago, a few strongs ago, when myself and Brother Antonio went through the section on family where it says, when we create family, we are recreating the celestial makeup of our Elohim. So within the Elohim, there is thought, which is the father, force, which is mother, and the expanded transcendence, which is the child. So we're going to build on that idea of thought, force, and expanded transcendence, or the father, mother, child dynamic throughout.
So we'll start with what. And we just answered, like, example of what is a generational curse. So I'm going to take it back a little bit in the reading, and the final question, before we ask why, we must cover what provides us with the knowledge of our subject of inquiry. And so right now our subject of inquiry is family. So what is behind, as I knew, like, what is behind our what we consider family? And really, it's the Elohim, right? It's the Most High Yah, and then the Elohim. And the Elohim, it's plural. So it is that duality of masculine and feminine. And so, just as Ema Precious said, I really look at it as the mirroring of the Elohim. That is the what is driving um, what we know to be family, the man, woman, and as you said, once you have that knowledge, wisdom, and you come into the understanding, which is child. So that is what is driving the knowledge and the concept of family as an Anu woman.
Mhm. So I'm going to jump in to the second question, um, which is why. So when I thought about why, and and just our studies, I wondered, well, why, right? Why does why come after what? So you have to have. So I view the what as your subjective inquiry, right? Your thought. So you have to have the thought first, but then the why is your motives, right? What's driving that what? What's driving that thought? So with the why, I thought about why did we create? Why were we crafted for one another, right? Why are we driven or motivated towards the creation of family? And if we're motivated, right, and even fashioned for the creation of family, um, how do we do that? Like why are we compelled to do that? And some of what I thought about is the idea of the original family, and the original family being that man, woman, and child. Um, and really thinking about why have so many of our families fallen so far from the mark. So that's, as we're going through these again, go through these questions and place your thoughts and comments in the chat, because I'm sure these are things that many of us have experienced, no matter which version of family you have currently, whether it is you as a woman, and of course I'm speaking to the women, mated, but perhaps maybe you don't have a child, or if there are mothers or fathers that are rearing children without a mate, or even if you're a family and you have what we're calling, all three, right? 3 out of 3. So I'm a 2 out of 3 myself, and we'll get into that a little later. But even if you have the 3 out of 3, um, superficially or on the surface, we're going to ask you to dig a little deeper. So I shared a bit about the why.
Mm-hmm. And so the next W is the who. So I'm going to take it right back to the beginning. The who is the Yah, is Yah, the Elohim. And if we remember from one of the previous readings where we talked about the declaration of truths, there's a figure in there. And it actually gives us the template for how that happens. And if you're paying attention, it really circles back around. It connects to the what and the why. So there's the Elohim, pours into man, pours into the woman, and then pours into the child. And so there is a hierarchy and a diagram a a chart for how this is supposed to be done. There's laws around how this is supposed to be done. And so when it comes to the who, everything stems from the Most High, and He pours into the man, and so on down the line. And so it's really about, and as I said, we can even connect back to the what, that divine intention, and making sure that we are mirroring and reflecting that divine intention. If we are all pieces of the source, then we should be making sure that we are moving as pieces of this source on earth, on this plane.
Absolutely. Yeah. Moving as a unit, right? So that actually brings me to something that I highlighted, and this is actually from the Anu Way, in the Kingdom section, and it says, "In any gathering of people, there will be a nucleus that represents the solidity Yes, the solidity of what that gathering drives towards. And so there has to be something that is solidifying a union, a coming together, a gathering of any sort, but particularly a family, right? Um, and so you have to ask yourself, or perhaps you want to ask yourself, um, what is at the nucleus? And so I'm gonna get into a bit of the where. And in that where, we'll explore our thoughts on what the nucleus should be, or what the Anu speaks of as what should be at the core. Um, so, with where, the question that came to mind is, where am I rooted? What is my family and the idea of generational curses? What is keeping me foundated? Um, when you think of the family, whether it's a 3 out of 3 family, right, or 2 out of 2 family, there's this idea of the creation of something. And when you think of the creation of something, Sister Deidre just went through the hierarchy, and at the top is, of course, the creator. And if the creator is at the top and you have your family, right? And then you have community. Community becomes that foundation, because community sets the tone for you to explore safely your purpose. Community sets the framework for how you are to function therein. And of course, we're assuming that your community also aligns with that hierarchy, that your community is steeped and rooted in um, divine inspiration, right? And is really breathing divine breath into every individual that is connected to that community. So, with that idea of the family being a house, I want you to envision something. I want you to envision that you have a home, and that home is sitting on what you thought was solid foundation, but you discover is a sinkhole. But you have a great opportunity. You have the opportunity to, with technology, to have that home lifted up off of that foundation that is truly sinking, and move it elsewhere. And I want you for a moment to think about what the implications are. And we're going to enumerate a few, but I want to just kind of leave that there for now.
So now we get to the when. Story time. So when we think about when, then the question becomes, when do we create family, right? We're talking about what drives the knowledge, what are the motives of creating. And so part of that is when, that could be a really interesting question. And so when I thought for me, like, when should I create family, or when should I have? So I'm going to bring a point back that Ema Precious made earlier, when we think about the when, you know, as someone who has not yet created that family as it stands as man, woman, child, I think about, well, why didn't I, have children earlier? And the truth is, you you have to be very cognizant of when. You can decide to start family with your mate, but it could probably be the wrong time. What are you creating? Are you going to engage in unconscious creation? That when has to be rooted in all of the rest of the what, why, how, which we'll get to later, as well as where. So are you creating without community? Are you creating without a foundation, right? And so we talk about the house that needs a foundation. So then you can find yourself where you may get older and there's no children, so you have the 2 out of 3, right? Or maybe you do have children and you're a single parent, you're still 2 out of 3. So no matter what we look at, the equation is looking a little funky, right? So, but let's say you do have the 3 out of 3. You have man, woman, child. But again, what's the foundation? What is it built on? What's the where? Where is it in the community? Do you have community surrounding you? What was the why? Why did you create? So all of these things have to really be thought about, and the what, obviously, the what, what were you thinking? Like, what is your knowledge? Where does that come from, as far as like how you identify what family is? What's driving that? A lot of us, we can think back about TV shows, right, that were very popular. People could say like, oh, they were wholesome, but is that what's driving you? Is it the mass media and the images that are kind of shoved down our throat, as far as like what creates family? Are we really thinking about the message behind the families and how they're created? When it comes to man, woman, child. what does that look like? Because there's a lot of things that may seem wholesome on, the tube, and they're not really that wholesome. So if that's what's driving you, that could also be something that um, taints your equation. So what really matters is what's driving it, and then what that foundation is. Is it divine intention? Do you have that community surrounding you? So yeah.
That's a lot to think about, right? I would imagine. And I just want to acknowledge that Baba Cruz, and greetings to everyone here. Baba Cruz says, we are the faculty of the School of Yah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, I would even venture to say we are the students, right? We are the students, striving to be faculty. I would say I am a student striving to be faculty at one point in life, um, in the School of Yah.
Mhm.
Uh,
What about
mhm.
patients? Maybe it's a hospital.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Some patients are a little bit more, further along than others. Some are maybe candy stripers. Is that what they used to call them? I'm showing my age. Candy.
Yes,
Candy
yes,
stripers and
yes.
orderlies,
Volunteers, yes,
nurses,
yes.
volunteers.
Yes, the young volunteers. Um, right, and Baba Cruz said again, "What is your mission and vision statement?" Right. So what he's sharing are some of the questions actually from Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships. So, do you have a family mission statement and vision statement? And these are tools that we can use to ensure that we are addressing generational curses, um, or just setting a tone for what we want to be our legacy, right? Moving forward. And so, with that, I'll say that in story time, right? Since that's what we're up to in the when, that I too am 2 out of 2, and again, let's just kind of connect it. So the 2 out of 2 concept has to do with that man, woman, child dynamic. And let's connect that man, woman, child dynamic to thought, force, and transcendent expansion. So our children are supposed to take what me as the mother has received from him as the father and create something even more magical, right? By expanding it and transforming it. Um, but as you heard, I said that I'm a 2 out of 3. So therefore, I am the mother with child or children. And what I realized is in that the value of having a community base. One, to set a standard, right? So the first piece of that standard is you really can't be very successful on this journey in, and we're going to stick to the theme in addressing generational curses or even acknowledging generational curses, never mind breaking, right? Because there is a YouTube video that she expounds on, what is needed in order to even begin to renounce some of the things that lead to us continuing generational curses. So I won't get into that. But what I will say is that it starts with being mated. It starts with um, understanding, for me as a woman, understanding what my role is and the value of that corresponding energy, and how challenging it is as a woman to be filled and fulfilled without the infilling of
Mhm.
light,
Mhm.
right? And that comes from the Most High Creator, indeed, first, because I have to have a relationship with the creator in order to even receive a vision for a mate. And these are all things that we have either already shared on or will share on in the future going through the Anu way. So, take little notes and read for yourself. But with that, um, we're going to take a little journey, if you will, into the idea of those that are the 3 out of 3. because you may feel that, this may not apply. Like you've as got the husband, you've got the children, but maybe things are a little shaky. Maybe you don't have the community. So
Mhm.
when a challenge presents itself, the question is, how do you manage? And it goes back to what I shared earlier about what is your rootage? What is your foundation?
Mhm.
Because when things begin to become unstable, even if we think of a tree, when things become unstable, um, you don't see it necessarily overtly. Sometimes it's all internal. And sometimes what you figure out is that the roots are rotted, so the core is rotted, but the exterior seems to be fine. Um, and so going back to the idea of having to take your home, right? Take your family and move it from an unstable foundation to a foundation more stable. You have to put it on a flatbed and move it across town. And in that, you have to empty out the house, right, Sister Deidre? What else do we have to do? What are the associated costs? What do you think with moving
Well,
literally?
yeah,
Mhm.
so let's think about that flatbed. Let's say, like, the family is there. Um, you got to put it on that flatbed truck that says wide load, and then either it yeah, if everything is not moved out, right, all those generational curses or those things that are breakable, all those, sensitive things, if it's not nailed down, it has to be removed. And the best thing is, if a house is being transported, those things have to be removed, so that way you can have a lighter lift. I mean, I'm sure a house is not light, but so you can have a lighter lift and transplant, from one space to the next, right? But what do we know about those types of houses? What kind of foundation are they built on? If it's the kind of home that's on the flatbed truck and the wide load, you know, they weren't necessarily built from the ground up, or at least like in the ground. When we usually see houses, they start in the ground, they build that foundation in the ground. But if you're able to take it and just pick it up and put it on the truck, where's the foundation? What is it resting upon? And then when you get it to the next place, it's just resting upon something surface. It's not rooted. There's no connection to the earth in that way,
Mhm.
where there's that stability. Then let's say, just figuratively picking up the house, you can risk cracks and all types of fine lines and things that might happen. So the best thing to do is like where you start. It's building that foundation on something stable. And then we can even think about what type of ground that foundation is. What if you build over a sinkhole? There's nothing there that's stable. Everything goes down. So that's why we really have to think about the W's, the what, the why, the where, the when. You know, I think I missed one.
The who,
The who,
that who.
right? The who.
You
You
got it.
really have to think about those things, because you could build on a foundation that's really not built on anything. It's not really a foundation, and everything will just crumble and cave in. So, those five W's and that H are really, really important, on how we do that. Brother Cruz says, you also must secure the home for transport with a special covering. Prepare for the destination. Absolutely.
Right.
And we know that some homes are not necessarily stable for some environments, right? There's some homes that are, what was it? It was not the mobile homes, the trailer homes, like the ones that are made like it's just like kind of a trailer. Those are the kind that you usually put on a flatbed truck. Um, Usually they're not built with the same insulation that a house that's, on a solid foundation in certain areas. So you can't take that and bring it to Alaska, or maybe you can, but then you have to outfit it with all these other things, and so now you have all these other dressings that maybe you didn't need if you just started with that foundation, right?
And what do you think of the implications are when you're taking a home, right? And let's go with what Baba Cruz said there, which is you must secure the home for transport with the special covering. So even if you have the covering, the special covering, even if you empty the home out, which is a great opportunity, right? And of course, this is all a metaphor. So we don't want to get too lost in the details and lose anyone on the journey. So to just connect those dots, what we're talking about is when we're lacking, when we think we have all that we need, but we're lacking a connection to the Most High, we're lacking community, or perhaps we may believe we have those connections, but maybe we don't have a mate. Yet we think we've created family. And so we're exploring some of the folly by way of this example of transporting a home and unstable foundation. So the what we thought about was the idea that once you take a structure that you've built um, and move it from one location to another because you definitely haven't considered the what is driving this, what is motivating this, and you surely may not have thought of the why. Why are you doing this, and why is this important to be done in the most upright way possible? So once you find a better location, so that would be akin to having community. You have a relationship with Yah, but then you get inside your home and you've got major cracks. You've got major work to do. That is the renovation, aka reformation. You have to now begin to break things down in order to build something up. And so, in that breaking things down, therein, you'll be able to really examine the generational curses, perhaps. Look at your life from piece by piece and figure out, was this actually the appropriate piece for this leg of the journey?
Right.
So that's some of what, I think
Right.
what we were trying to convey with that analogy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like those cracks are those generational curses, right? Really scrutinize those cracks. Or the generational curses could be those things that weren't nailed down and they just had to break. So what happens? You have to get rid of them. That's the reformation, that transformative process, you know, um, changing what the house looks like. What does this house look like and what's inside the house? Sometimes it means that I got to gut it and start from the beginning.
It's the ultimate rehab, right? So
Okay.
Baba Cruz
So
says,
what
I'm
they
sorry,
do.
Baba Cruz says, some environments may not allow your house to take occupation. Um, oh, a very much powerful message. Thank you. Give thanks. Toda.
Yeah. All right. So,
So,
go ahead.
no, no,
Before we go, I just want to give a shout out to all of the Anu family that are in the chat. So, Baba Cruz, Sister Aquia, Sister Munira, Sister Kashia, Sister Sequoia, Sister Savanit, Sister Moksha. Thank you so much for joining us this Sabbat. And please share with us. You know, your what's driving you after we've, really shared, the 5 W's and how, this really, how we kind of internalize this and shared with you all, what are some of your 5 W's? You don't have to list all of them, but what do you think your 5 W's are? And while you're doing that, maybe we can go to the how, or was there something else you wanted to add, Ema Precious?
no. Yeah, we can go right into the how. So we're gonna go to the last line of the quote from the book Solutions to Dysfunctional Family Relationships. And it says, how this family is served is defined by home culture. So I'll read it again. How this family is served is defined by home culture.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it looks like you want to say something. Say
Like
it.
we're right back where we started. Culture is what drives everything. All of what we think are separate, they actually sit inside culture. How we think, how we teach our children, how the man pours into the woman, pours into the child. All of that is a part of culture. Religion, is culture. How we do things. That's what culture is. It's how we do things. So a lot of things are actually not as separate as we think. They're all different microcosms of culture. They all make up what we know as culture.
And what I find interesting is in the quote, right? It also says originally family was defined by those who served the household. So if you think as far back as originally will take your conscious mind, right? My thought goes to a time where we had maybe servants, maybe additional people who assisted with things in the home. They too had a role, and they too were family. So that goes beyond that man, woman, child dynamic, but really it goes more to that thought force and transcended expansion idea of family. Because when you have again that connection, then then a thought can be sparked, an idea for how we can continue to build and create an infrastructure that can get to the point where you have a home culture, where you have the idea of a family rooted in community, because the family isn't existing outside of its community, it exists only within that
Right.
community. So
Right.
that how does bring it right on back.
Right back. The family is a microcosm of the community. Um, and they feed each other back and forth. They don't, neither is an entity unto itself. They're all related, they're all connected, and there's constant moving back and forth.
Mhm, mhm.
So I want
Yeah.
to check the chat. There isn't anything yet. And if not, I guess we can move on. Um, Yeah, there's nothing in the chat yet. So, yeah, I guess before we go, was there anything else to add? Um, yeah.
No, I think this was I hope. I thought that this was helpful for me, right? I hope it was helpful for you all. It was definitely helpful for me. And I guess just when you said that they feed one another, it took me to the sentence right before. So it says, as they serve it, it serves them. So that's that reciprocal relationship.
Right.
So we're serving one another. We enter into this family so that there can be this supreme allegiance
Mm-hmm.
to one another as
Right.
as a worship, right? A
Right.
body members. And through that we exchange and move fluidly. And that becomes the home culture, right? That becomes it. That becomes the way that we can begin to move beyond, right? I don't want to say break, but move beyond generational curses. So
Mm-hmm.
think about how you can move beyond the hurdles that historically has kind of tethered your family and precluded them from truly climbing that chain and
Mm-hmm.
seeking higher ground.
Right. I think like one way, what we have learned on our Sabbath calls, that moving beyond, it's not just like looking at the surface things that are in your maybe immediate family, and it really is that redemption, right? It's or renouncing. Sorry, it's renouncing. So not just like what we see immediately, like in what first the nuclear family, but
Mhm.
even thinking about ancestry, what's in your family tree. Maybe some of those cracks in the house are really, really fine. So you're gonna have to look at it with a microscope to, get that putty in there and sand it down and then paint it.
Mhm.
um,
Like you
oh,
said, break it down. Yes.
yes, shalom. Chief just joined us. He says, thank you for your consistency. Like you said, we are serving one another if we are family. The reciprocation or lack thereof begins to highlight what motives folks are serving. Absolutely. And that's exactly, this is what it's called, motives. What are your motives? And reciprocity must sit in everything. Absolutely.
And you know what? That makes me think of, sometimes when we think of balance, right? And even in relationships, and I guess I'll share some of my imbalance historically. I thought that 50-50 was an actual thing, right? And that we should be giving and receiving the same thing.
Mm,
Um, and that is actually
we all thought
and
that.
to that, yeah, right. We all. I wasn't gonna speak. I was gonna speak for myself.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me, right? But I think in that idea, based on what Chief put here, and thank you, we're happy to be consistent. Um, the reciprocation is not going to necessarily be that every ANU member is doing the same thing, right? It's that you're doing what you're called to do and
Right.
you're doing it diligently,
Right.
and that you're not necessarily looking at your brother or sister and thinking that they should do what you're doing or
Hmm.
that what they're doing is somehow less important or significant.
Right.
Because much like in a family, once that happens, once you may be the mate, maybe it's the wife that believes that because you make more money, you have greater value,
Hmm.
or it doesn't work that way at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that just came to mind and I wanted to
Yeah.
share.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's a good one. That's a big misconception. Well, if I bring this much money to the table, then this is what I'm worth. And the value may be, and not even maybe, the value is in how you keep the home. That's the value, and it brings back to the line, as they serve it, it serves them. But how you're serving is going to look different. Everybody can't sweep the bathroom floor. That'd be a really crowded bathroom. Maybe someone needs to do the kitchen, and in the kitchen, someone needs to wash the dishes. Someone needs to vacuum the stairs and get in all the cracks and crevices if it's carpeted. Everybody's thing is different. And and that's the beauty of it. It's because we're all here to do different things. Just like a beehive, everybody has their job. Everybody can't be the queen. Some people are drones. Some people tend to be young. It's how you do your job, and that doing is what's the special part. Chief Yuya says a motive begins with control. If you are unable to control your own force, you cannot impel another. Some never reciprocate because they lack self ownership or control.
Mhm,
Absolutely. You
mhm.
know, and how many times have we, been in that place? Like we're here, like, right, we are, I guess for some they say faculty in the school of Yah. I say we're patients in the hospital.
And we
Um,
see to
so
me.
that means we've probably all been in that space where there was a lack of ownership or self control, self ownership or self control. And that means that's like that. Are you able to take a really hard look at yourself and say, here's what the issues are, and this is what I have to correct? Or do we sit in the fence in the ego, right? And those are definitely the things that continue to perpetuate the generational curses, being very egoic and sitting there, sitting in a fence instead of transcending beyond, right?
That's so interesting. The idea of the ego came to me when you used the analogy of cleaning the bathroom. How many people, how crowded is it going to get in there? And it's almost like the ego will drive you to believe that
Mm-hmm.
either what you're doing isn't what you should be doing because you should be doing that other thing that looks more fun and more attractive. But then when maybe perhaps you get to do that other thing, then it's like, no, it's not this. I'm called and I'm charged to do something else. I need to be in the spotlight, let's say. And then you realize what's required for that. But the
Mm-hmm.
ego is insatiable.
Right.
And so you'll just keep wanting more and you'll never realize that, you know what, that in and of itself could be
Mm-hmm.
generational curse. So
So,
yeah.
and it when you are that egoic, and your motives, um, you're not able to control your own force, as Chief said. It prevents you from taking that sober assessment. Thank you, Sister Kashia, for that reminder. Like taking that sober assessment
Mhm.
of who and what you really are. And so, and I think even I've gone through that, journey. That's been part of my own journey in, transcendence and growth. It's like taking that sober assessment of who I am, who I was, and who I no longer want to be, and who I'm going to be, who I'm striving to be, who and what.
Mhm.
He says, those without self control do not motivate or reciprocate, but only serve as a vacuum of resources. A taker is its own red flag of lack of self willed motion. Givers never need motivation. Yeah, it's that taker, that taking spirit is like a demon, like just sitting inside, just sucking up all the air in the room. And I think we all know what that feels like if you've been in a place and someone sucking up all the air, like to the point where there's just no oxygen left, and it's like, what is everybody supposed to do? So if there's someone in the group or the family, right, that's doing that, how can the family survive? As they serve it, it serves them, right?
Mhm. And what happens in that, since and because we all have experienced that one or two that sucks up all the air in the room, there's a awkward pause, and then one by one, everyone winds up leaving that room because there's nothing left to be said. There is a dearth of synchronicity, right? There's no feeling of a good vibe, and so one by one, you wind up in the kitchen, right, instead of the living room because it's
Back
like we
leftovers,
gotta go,
eating the food you're not supposed to eat.
right? So I mean, it just is, it's just some clues, some breadcrumbs, so that we can all get right, because ultimately that's what this is about. But you have to recognize what you need to work on and what you need to address before you can even begin to address it. Um, and I think what Chief's last response kind of reminds me of is that there are times, and I think in my past, where it's like, well, why won't you do this thing, right? Like, okay, I'll help you along, but you kind of can't. You're always pushing because a taker is never motivated to give. So therefore, you're left giving even more. You're left leaning into them even more, which is
Right.
doing what? Exerting more energy, exerting more of your resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that brings me back to then, how do you resource? How do you resource?
Mm-hmm.
What are you foundated in? Um,
Right.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah. And all that giving can leave someone physically and emotionally depleted. Brother Cruz says, buy the cake. I don't, are you talking about eating the cake in the kitchen? I'm not sure.
Oh, he said, yeah, buy the cake in the kitchen. So you wind up
Right.
buy the cake. Like, I didn't get it at first either.
Yeah, sitting in the cake, licking icing, sugar, diabetes. Chief says you're in the kitchen until the taker creates a drama scene to be poured into again. Absolutely, because how many times has drama in the house followed from one end of the house to the next, all the way from the front to the back.
Because
Um,
the time will be over the cake. It's like,
right,
why give me a piece of cake? There'll be something. There'll always
right,
be
right. I'm
something.
get this energy at some point. He says this is why there's so many arguments at family gatherings. They feed you drama and you return nurturing. As
Hmm.
you know, yeah. And I'm thinking like when you asked the question about the generational curses earlier, like an example, and I was like eating, right? Some of the foods we eat. How many family gatherings are founded or built in just like getting together to eat and have food? We can think of, I'm not going to name them, but we can think of, many days throughout the Gregorian calendar year that people like to get together and just eat food.
Get drink, eat and
And
drink.
drink,
Yeah.
right? And then there's always, and there's jokes, and comedians talk about like all the drama that people are gonna expect.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. These are not things to be proud of all the time. When we are talking about the drama, and yeah, I guess sometimes it's good to like be able to laugh at things, but how much of that laughter is covering up tears and just pain of not really wanting to even be bothered with that. you know. Sister Kashia says, reciprocity is the metabolic breath of a group or community, the 14 keys. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Toda, for that quote.
Yeah.
I have to learn how to say more words in Hebrew.
We're working on it.
Right. Working on it. It's a work in progress. Okay. So I don't think that we have any more comments. Give thanks for everyone who joined us in the chat, as well as those of you who are just watching. As always, please like, share, and subscribe and spread the word of Assaan-ANU. Shema means to hear in Hebrew, or to listen. And just also a little bit more housekeeping, just a reminder, we will be taking applications in March of this year. So that is in about, it actually is going to be in about a month, because we'll be starting it actually during the spring equinox. So March 21st, I believe. So it's about 4 weeks from now. But you can say next month because next month is March. So you can visit www.anulifeglobal.org, and under Anu Womb or Anu Man, and those are where the applications will be for both men and women. So again, applications are opening up in March. And I think it would be befitting to close with the preface again.
Absolutely.
You have it.
You want me to pull it up? Sure. My pleasure.
This is the good.
All right. Let me move this over so I'm not looking away from you all. Give me 1 second. All right. The Anu Way Foundation preface. This book is not to be read only once. Read the words of this book of knowledge and wisdom out loud. Discuss the convictions of this work with your Anu brothers and sisters. Share this information with your people. This publication should be read daily. Every line in this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own merit. The truth is to be deliberated.
Say it again for the people in the back.
The truth is to be deliberated.
Thank you. And that's exactly what our goal is here on Assaan-ANU. So thank you for joining us. As always, we look forward to seeing folks. We're opening up our Shabbat now. So Shabbat Shalom for those of you who observe. And we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Same time, same place, next strong, 6:30, the Anu Life Global Ministries YouTube channel. Thank you. Peace. Laila Tov.